Now, the emotive issue of land reform was initiated by the African National Congress back in 1994, but after nearly 2 decades, land reform is still experiencing major problems. Leon Lowe, Executive Director of the Free Market Foundation, and Annalise Crosby, Parliamentary Representative and Advisor of Legal and Land Affairs for AFGRI South Africa, join us now for more. Leon, let's start off with you. When we take a look at the landscape regarding land reforms in South Africa, what's taking place at the moment?
Well, firstly, we have to understand the term land reform is actually misleading and even fraudulent. It doesn't refer to land reform at all. It refers, what it really means is it's code for saying how many white-owned commercial farms will be transferred, and people think to blacks. No, will be nationalized. The government actually doesn't transfer them to blacks. So the 30% to blacks is also a misnomer and very misleading. What the government does is it buys land from white farmers. This is then called redistributed, quote unquote, and then black people become tenants there. Now that itself is actually misleading and fraudulent in the sense that there's something like 40,000 white farmers. If you redistribute 30% of those, and nobody knows whether 30% means by number or by area or by value, it's just a number that floats around in the air. How many blacks are possibly ever going to be beneficiaries, not as owners but as tenants? And so this is actually completely deceptive to 40 million black South Africans who will end up with no land at all. So all of the emotion attached to this is nothing other than emotion. It's got no practical relevance. Real land reform is land where people in fact live, which is in urban areas, towns and cities and villages. And this is still held by black South Africans, occupied by black South Africans, largely under Verwoerd's fantasy of blacks living as tenants on government land. So real land reform, which we propose, is that all black occupied land in all the townships and the villages and the settlements and the locations of South Africa be converted to full freehold title. Then we're talking about maybe 10 million black landowners. Then for those who don't have land, use massive amounts of superfluous government land, land the government owns but doesn't do anything with. You don't actually have to go and buy a single white farm. All you have to do is take land that is readily available, freely distributable, upgrade existing titles. So if land reform really meant land reform, as opposed to some emotional political sort of revenge on white Afrikaners who voted for apartheid, that it would be a very different thing. So what is being called land reform is actually defrauding black South Africans of what they really deserve and need, which is to get rid of the whole idea of the 1913 Land Act, according to which black South Africans don't own land. It's time we actually changed that mindset.
I'd like to bring Annalise in now. She's in our Cape Town studios. Annalise, strong views coming through from Leon, and it seems as though we're trying to do real land reform, but we're going about it the wrong way. Do you agree?
Yes, look, I think there's a lot to be criticized about the way that land reform has been executed in this country up to date. And I think from our perspective, certainly, in principle, we would also support a scenario where as many people as possible get title and where we look at government land that is available first. But I do think the situation is a little bit more complex in that a lot of the government land seemingly is already occupied, and that there are also, there's the issue of traditional leaders executing power in communal areas, which is a sensitive political area, which makes it, a bit difficult for government, I think, to go that route. But I think ideally what you would like to see at the end of the day is as many people as possible owning their own homes and getting titles to land, rather than having more and more land in state ownership.
Leon, coming back to you, no doubt government has obviously heard these views. What are they doing about it?
Well, actually, it's quite exciting. There was 2-3 weeks ago in Northern Free State and in Ngwate, Premier of the Free State, Magashule, and the Mayor of Ngwate, which is better known to most people as Parys and Heilbron and other municipalities in the area, announced a very exciting policy whereby all black occupied land in the Northern Free State municipal area of Ngwate will be converted to full freehold title for free. every black household will be given a free title. And Premier Ace Magashula announced that this will be rolled out throughout the province, and I have had discussions with people in Department of Land Affairs that this should happen throughout South Africa. That'll be true land reform. That'll be the true end of racial discrimination on land, when black South Africans own their land under exactly the same title as white South Africans. And I just want to say, this idea of chiefs being a problem in the traditional areas is actually also exaggerated, and it's not more complicated. It's actually quite simple. Firstly, most black South Africans do not live in tribal lands or under chiefs. They live in towns and cities, in what used to be white areas, so-called white group areas. The chiefs themselves, you know, when people say the chiefs oppose land ownership, I always say, who asked them? The answer is nobody has, and we have. We've had meetings with Contra Lesso, with chiefs throughout South Africa. They don't oppose it. All that's an issue is, for example, whether a person who owns a piece of land in a town or village in a tribal area is free to sell it to someone outside the tribe. So if you say free ownership and trade within the tribe, well, they don't have a problem with that. And then there's some, like, for example, Bakhatlaba Mocha, Bakhatlaba Macau. These are areas in what used to be better known as Mutse district, northeast of Pretoria. This is a tribal area where we partnered with the tribal community and with the chiefs, and every single piece of land is now there held under full freehold title in a tribal area with the support of the chiefs. And there are 3 chiefs involved. And so the same will happen. Chief Patakile Holomisa, a member of parliament, prominent traditional leader in South Africa, is a good friend of ours, and we've discussed, for example, giving tribal communities the ability to vote on what type of tenure they want. But that's small again. The big issue in South Africa, where most black South Africans, including you, live, is in the traditionally white parts of South Africa. Those are the Sowetos and the Langas and the Khayelitsas of South Africa. This is where real land reform can and should take place, which is converting all of that land from dead capital, as it now is, to full dynamic capital, freely owned and tradable. All of these restrictive RDP conditions and leasehold conditions, just scrap them all, convert them all to freehold title. That'll be real land reform. And that's what the word should mean.
So we've got a shining example taking place on the northwest of the country. Let's hope that gets unfolded onto other areas. And
it's got the support of a prominent, very prominent ANC political leader, Ace Magashula. A fabulous talk that he gave. I was there. It was moving. It was really 100 years after the 1913 Land Act. 100 symbolic titles were handed over to the first recipients of a program. That is real land reform, and my hat's off to him. I think this is the beginning of real change.
Leon, I agree with you there. But Annelies, just to get your closing pointers, are enough consultations taking place? So we've heard Leon mentioning that they not really speaking to the tribal leaders. That's with regard to some other organizations. But with regard to white farmers, what's their response to the issue of land reforms?
Look, certainly, what Leon is talking is very exciting, and we need to go for the low-hanging fruit wherever we can. So, where the solution is implementable in practice and can easily be done, so that would be a big part of the solution. But land reform does remain a very complex and emotive issue, and if the political will is there and the budgets are forthcoming and the implementation, because that is where we've been failing big time, is in implementing whatever policies there are. If we can get that right, we will solve land reform in this country.
Well, thank you so much to my guests. I wish we had an hour to unpack this discussion, but we'll do that another day perhaps. But that was Leon Lowe, Executive Director of the Free Market Foundation, as well as Annelies Crosby, Parliamentary Representative and Advisor of Legal and Land Affairs for Agri South Africa.